Welcome to the Nourish Child Podcast, a show about childhood nutrition, feeding kids, and dealing with the ups and downs of growing a healthy child. Here's your host, registered dietitian and childhood nutrition expert, Jill Castle.
Before we get started, I want to tell you about new Egg Life wraps. Egg Life wraps are made with eggs, not flour. Egg Life has the fresh taste you love and the nutrition you need with less than a gram of carbs and 35 calories. Plus, you get 5 grams of protein. Find Egg Life wraps chill-in the refrigerated section or at egglifefoods.com. Use code JILL5 for $5 off your online order. Hey everyone, welcome to the Nourish Child Podcast. I'm Jill Castle, and today I have Stacy Billis on the show. She is a Nutella loving, pop culture obsessed cookbook writer and half of the duo behind the top ranked podcast, Didn't I Just Feed You? Praised for her non-judgmental approach and laid back cooking style, Stacy is all about bringing joy back to busy family kitchens. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Her latest cookbook, which I love the title of this, Winner, Winner, Chicken Dinner, really hearkening back to some of my Southern experiences, is a collection of 50 easy, vibrant, modern chicken dinner recipes that you can cook any night of the week. You can find more of Stacy's recipes on her website, including things other than chicken. I will include all of Stacy's links in the show notes for you. But Stacy, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here and to speak with you, Jill. You're my favorite. You were one of the very first guests on Didn't I Just Feed You?
I know. And that was a couple of years ago. You guys have been going strong for a while.
Yeah, about 3 years.
That's awesome. That is awesome. And tell me, through the pandemic, how was, keeping a podcast alive and creative? Did you focus a lot on pandemic cooking or?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, it was a lifeline. I mean, having some work and creating some boundaries between being mom, a teacher's assistant.
Oh, yeah.
I have an 11-year-old and a 14-year-old. Being tech support for remote school. So, when I could hole away in this little, everybody can maybe see me if they're watching the video piece of this, in this little tiny dark corner of my house where I record, was an absolute lifeline.
Yeah.
Megan and I, my co-host Megan and I, we started Didn't I Just Feed You really, really to solve problems for parents.
Mm-hmm.
We really felt like food media geared towards parents was a little bit judgy. On one end, there were the people who were like, here's how you feed your kids organic and you should grow your own food and this is how to keep them healthy. And on the other side, it was all like 15-minute meals, really no regard for, what you're putting on the table, just get it done. And, both are great if they suit you. There's no judgment, but there's also a whole spectrum in between.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons why we had you on, Jill, is because we are food professionals. We're not nutritionists. Of course, we have a sense of, what we want to put on our tables, but that sense really comes from our own personal experiences.
Sure.
And what we like to eat.
Yeah.
So it's great to have guests who can fill in the blanks. But for us, it's just about solving the problem for as many parents as possible. The problem being, and actually, I don't even like to call it a problem, solving the challenges of feeding a family day in and day out.
Yeah.
So the set of challenges completely changed during the pandemic.
They did.
What kind of groceries you had access to, the fact that we were cooking day and night, the fact that budgets changed for a whole lot of people, where they were going to get food, when they were going to get food, where food was going to come from, and just the sheer exhaustion because we were all just trying to make sure that we and our families were safe. We needed to put a lot of mental energy into our jobs. I was being lighthearted about coming into this little office of mine and being able to work, but that isn't the reality for a lot of people.
Sure.
So we definitely shifted our content, but it's funny, at the end of the day, it's kind of all the same.
Mm.
People just want support. They want to know that they're not alone, and they want some simple solutions that work, that are flexible, that they can adapt to the way that they live, to their budgets, to the way that their family eats. So,
Yeah.
there was a lot that was different. And in the end, we also learned a lot about what stays the same about feeding a family through all the different seasons of life.
Hmm. Well, I do love, my philosophy is all foods fit. So you'll see
Yes.
things in my pantry that many people will say, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you have 10 bags of chips." That's my husband. But, I've always felt like, hey, chips are in the world and my kids
Yep.
need to know how to navigate chips. And I can trust the fact that they can or learn to
Yes.
navigate chips. But, and I had all 4 of my kids home for 10 months. Even my grown and flown kids decided to roost back in the nest. And
Yes.
the pain of cooking several meals a day and shopping and coming up with creative ideas
Yeah.
and keeping it, nutritious, but also flexible. And it was a real challenge, even for
Yeah.
myself. I remember having a moment in time where I was like, I hate cooking. I am sick and
Yes.
tired of doing this.
Me too. And it's my job. And I do it because I love it. Yes, I
Yes.
relate.
I said, I might be one of the only dietitians that doesn't like to cook. I mean, I'll do it and I can do it well, but it's not like,
Yep.
if I can go play golf instead of cook, I'll do that in
Yes.
a heartbeat.
Totally.
But
Totally. And
one-
keeping the food joy was also a major challenge, right?
yes.
Food joy is something that Megan and I talk a lot about
Mm.
because really at the end of the day, we can give you recipes, we can give you tips, and the internet is full of them also. We'd like to think that ours are very clever and smart and well curated. But, food joy is really such an important part of eating. And that really went away during the pandemic.
Yeah.
For a lot of us. It was hard.
Yeah. Well, I think there was a lot of stress around food. And frankly, I think a lot of families still feel a lot of stress around food. And one of the things we'll talk about today is just this whole back to school push, which
Yes.
I feel like, I'm not in that phase anymore because I have one kid going back to school, but he's going back to college and I don't really have to plan anything around food and meals. But a lot of parents
bless
are
you.
out there. I know. I feel like I slogged through all those years. But I do remember, spending a lot of time getting a lot of positive energy around, we're going to start this school year off right. I am going to plan everything and be so on top of this. And just the energy was like really strong and positive. And then 2 weeks into it, be like, oh God, I don't want to plan meals again. I have to cook and we have all these meetings. And so let's talk about back to school for families. And obviously, it's going to look a little bit different this year because we are going back still with COVID in the picture. Yet, I think a lot of families are very excited about being able to send their kids back, masked or not, vaccinated, hopefully. Where are you thinking? What do you think back to school is looking like for families this year?
Well, I totally know that energy you're talking about. It's, it's the best. It's like there's this rush in the beginning of like getting to do a little bit of shopping or taking out, the backpacks and dusting everything off and fresh and new. And it's been lovely to be together all summer, but
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Have fun at school.
Exactly. I think in terms of cooking this year, I'm finding that a lot of parents are still really burnt out from the pandemic. Even though the summer seems to be for, not like 2019 summer, but kids did go to camp. There has been, it seems like people are traveling and doing their thing and seeing family. And a lot of that has given us a recharge. I think you're right that it's still present. There's still a bit of stress about it. There's a lot of stress about the anticipation of the school year. We're recording this where, it seems like news around COVID is changing in real time all of a sudden.
All of a sudden.
Yeah. So I think that there's still a lot of like questions like, wait, the school year is going to be normal, right? So I think there's a little bit of anxiety. And so I wonder, and I at least want to leave room for a lot of that normal excitement to be kind of dampened down.
Mhm.
And for that to be okay, to give parents permission to still be exhausted.
Yeah.
Even if they got a little recharge, even if you traveled, even if you got to, see grandparents and spend time. So I really think my mindset going into the school year is about keeping it easy and still leaving room to recharge.
Mm.
I would love to see parents keeping it super easy on themselves.
Mhm.
I know again that there's a lot of job fluctuation happening right now. People's budgets are going to be in flux too, a lot of change, a lot of people moving. If parents can afford it, and I understand that not everybody can, I really would love to see people, even if they've never considered it before, maybe consider a meal delivery service.
Mm.
Or, building takeout into your meal plan to support a local business. Restaurants are still very much hurting and need our support. Maybe consider a meal plan service.
Mm.
Meal planning is key. And I would love to talk about it a little bit
Sure.
if you feel like that's the
Oh,
way
yeah.
to go here, because it's a lifesaver. At the same time, you hear lots of food professionals talk about meal planning. And
Mhm.
some people just aren't meal planners. And it can be
Right.
a frustrating piece of advice to hear over and over. So I want to get into that a little bit. But one of the things is, if you're not a meal planner, there are meal planning services. So not associated with them at all. Cook Smarts is a meal planning service that I've used
Mhm.
personally. It's fantastic. They have tons of recipes. They give you a menu. If you don't like the menu that week, you can adjust it. It has a lot of flexibility. And there are others out there too. So I would love to see parents really go easy on themselves and really look for help and support wherever they can.
Mhm.
That's really where I want to start. Like, give yourself permission to get help. We're still tired. And
Yeah.
feeding a family is hard under the best circumstances.
It is so hard.
It is so hard. It's hard to stay inspired. It's hard to find the time.
Yeah.
There are a lot of challenges. And I do also think, and you can speak to this more than me, that parents carry a lot of background noise. Sometimes it's completely in the background, sometimes it's in the front about nutrition. I
Mm.
think there's been a lot of anxiety that I've heard for the first time about kids having gained weight.
Yeah.
It's still, like some kids were active this summer, but it's still fairly limited.
Yeah.
It doesn't compensate for the whole year where our kids were home playing more video games, eating more, maybe indulging more, because we needed something.
Yeah.
I was happy.
Yeah.
I know in my house, those chips went a long way.
Yes. Yes.
There were some days where that's just what it was, and that was okay.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
Let's just be easy on ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. I also, my observation too was, the pandemic really sort of pulled back the curtain on a lot of,
Yes.
I don't want to use the word dysfunction, but just, I don't know, just pulled back the curtain on a lot of maybe gaps or areas that you could slide by or not focus on, and then all of a sudden you're faced with, feeding your family every day. It might have been like, oh, I can get by. I don't cook. But then you're home for 10 months with a family of 4 to 6. And like from a budget standpoint, you need to cook. You need to put that into practice, or, at least find some, dinner items that are fitting within your budget and your cooking skill level, for example.
Yes. Yes.
So I think that the pandemic has been very hard on families, but at the same time, there's been a lot of, silver linings, a lot of families able to get together. I know, like, I have one child who is like a master at sourdough bread making now. I never had so much bread in my house before.
Megan and I did an entire episode on sourdough. It was impossible to ignore. And I created a starter. I ended up having multiple starters around my house. My co-host Megan is a baker at heart, and that's how she's professionally trained. I'm a cook. And I finally was like, I have starter coming out the wazoo, and I have not made a single loaf yet. I finally made one loaf. It was a disaster. I was like, okay, sourdough's not for me.
Yeah.
That's not my thing. But yes, I agree with you. It was interesting to see that our listenership at Didn't I Just Feed You spiked way high. People really being like, I got to cook. Please help me.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we talk a lot about is being honest with yourself about your skill level, about what your family likes to eat. That's part of keeping it easy. It's, there is a time and a place for being an aspirational cook.
Yeah.
But to give yourself a break and not approach functional weeknight cooking as an aspirational activity.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that it won't be delicious and great and satisfying, but there really is a difference between aspirational cooking and really like knowing what you can bang out in 30 minutes realistically.
Yeah.
So knowing how to read a recipe, knowing your skill level, being honest with yourself about your interest in cooking, being honest with yourself about your schedule that week. And I do think that, like you're saying, there is a silver lining of families and home cooks, at least, really kind of getting a handle on that. And I hope so. And I think that feeds into this meal planning piece too.
Yeah. I love the term aspirational cook because, whenever I'm like in my best meal planning, gonna cook I usually pick one night of the week to be an aspirational cook.
Yes, that's
just
fantastic,
one. And that
I love that.
It feels like a big deal for me. Like
yes.
I am the least amount of ingredients, the fastest. That's my mojo with cooking. It's like, what can I make with the least or what I have on hand or the least amount of ingredients and the fastest?
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's grilling a piece of protein, throwing together a salad, making some vegetables on the side or cutting up some fruit, or making rice or baking a potato. Super simple.
I couldn't agree with you more. People are constantly writing to us saying, oh, you guys must have these elaborate meals. Your kids must be so spoiled. I mean, they are in that what we churn out is delicious. And maybe I have 2 aspirational nights a week instead of 1. But like, I'm a busy working mom also, not always in the kitchen cooking. I also go downstairs at 6:00 and I'm scrambling to get something on the table by 6:45 because there's practice and meetings and, more work and everything else. So I agree with you. I would love to see more parents really embrace that kind of cooking during the week. I think that people who tend to go to aspirational cooking too frequently don't realize that, if you set yourself up to succeed by keeping it really simple, you think you're going to be bored. You think you aren't going to churn out anything delicious. In fact, you are if you do it right. And we can talk about some concrete tips for that.
Sure.
And then the more you succeed at that, and the more you want to go in the kitchen, the more you want to go in the kitchen, the more you will go in the kitchen. The more you do go in the kitchen, the better your skills will be. I mean, even something as simple as, don't pick a ton of recipes that have lots of prep, even if it's super healthy and seems super quick. If the recipe requires you to chop a carrot, an onion, celery, and red peppers, that's a lot of chopping.
Yeah.
I can do that real quick because I'm a pro. But if you don't have great knife skills, even though maybe the next step is just saute and cook, whatever, it's something super easy. All that chopping is going to be frustrating. It's going to take longer than the recipe says it's going to take, so on and so forth. So just keep it simple, build, and then over time, your knife skills will get better because you're encouraged, because you do it more, because you're willing to go in the kitchen.
Yeah.
So if you're someone who wants to be an aspirational cook, work your way up to it.
Yeah.
And that simple cooking that you're talking about, It can be so easy. So one of the things, I keep going back to meal planning, and we'll get to that. I keep saying we'll get to that. But now I want to jump into meal prep
Okay,
too,
meal prep.
because meal prep is a piece of meal planning in some ways. So one
Sure.
of my favorite things to say is cook once, eat twice.
Yes.
Meal prep does not have to be spending 3 hours on your Sunday in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
It can be that if I'm making pasta tonight, I'm going to use this water that I just waited to boil that took, 10 minutes. And I'm going to boil 2 pounds of pasta. I'm going to put 1 pound aside for tonight. And the other one, I'm going to parboil. I'm going to cook it, 2 minutes shorter. And then I'm going to let it cool on a sheet pan with just a drizzle of olive oil so it doesn't stick. Once it's cooled completely, I'm going to pack it in Tupperware and put it in the fridge. Now I have pasta ready to go for another night.
Oh, that's a great tip.
Yeah, if I'm making rice, I'm going to double it. If I'm making beans in my Instant Pot, same, I'm going to double it.
Mm-hmm.
Same with, you can do this with meat that you do in your slow cooker. You can do this with veggies that you're roasting. Anytime you turn on one of your appliances, think about what you can double that will keep, because that cuts down your cooking on another night.
Mm-hmm.
Especially taco filling. Great, a great easy one. You're going to saute some ground turkey with taco seasoning. Don't saute 1 pound, saute 2 pounds. 1 pound is for tonight. You can even freeze the rest. And now your freezer is starting to build a stock of things that you can grab. You can do this for breakfast too. Frittatas, hard-boiled eggs, oatmeals, smoothie packets that you can freeze and just have someone dump in the blender and whir up.
Mm-hmm.
So, think about where you can double up, where you can bulk up, and then put things aside for other meals. And this is my favorite. Also think about those meal helpers, those flavor bombs, pestos, tzatziki, chimichurri, dressings, any kind of sauces. Flavored breadcrumbs. You're toasting breadcrumbs for something, toast a whole bunch, throw in some Parmesan, let them cool, put them in a mason jar in the fridge. They're going to keep for about a week. You're roasting, vegetables for tonight's dinner. Take a container of cherry tomatoes, throw it on a sheet pan with olive oil, or take a whole bunch of pre-peeled garlic cloves that you grabbed at the supermarket, a whole bunch of olive oil in a sheet pan, roast those too.
Mm-hmm.
Those are great flavor boosters for a dinner down the line. You're roasting vegetables, take leeks and bacon and just roast it. Make bacon bits. You're roasting vegetables for tonight's dinner, put some bacon in the oven. You don't know what you're going to do with it, but you'll take it out and you'll crumble it up.
Mm-hmm.
Quick pickle some red onions. All of these great flavor boosters. Now, let's go back to the dinner that you said, a quick dinner. I'm going to quickly grill some protein. I'm going to make a baked potato. You throw on some homemade pesto that you have waiting in your fridge, or those bacon bits, or, those yummy leeks that you roasted that you didn't know what you're going to do with. Suddenly, a very quick, simple 20, 30-minute meal feels a lot more elegant, flavorful, satisfying, because you had these little boosters waiting for you in the fridge. So, there's a way to do this where you can keep it really delicious and satisfying.
You reminded me that I need to learn how to make pickled onions.
Oh, yeah.
I know there's a really quick way to do that.
They're
is. So delicious.
They're so delicious. And really the difference between, quick and long pickling really has to do with like how long they'll sit. But if you just want them on hand for the week, there are a couple ways you can do it, but you don't even have to make a pickling liquid, honestly. You can let them sit in a splash of water, a whole bunch of acid, lemon or lime juice, and a big hearty sprinkle of salt. It's a little bit between, I'll get technical here, macerating and pickling, but you get the same effect in a fraction of the time. And another quick tip is that, don't be afraid of that citrus juice that comes already. Sometimes it's shaped like a lemon or a lime.
Yeah.
It's in the produce aisle. So, that doesn't have the same flavor as freshly squeezed. But a little container of lime juice, as long as it's all natural and it doesn't have an aftertaste, that's perfect for pickling, onions, because you literally just fill a glass with that, a splash of water, some hearty like salt, hearty sprinkle of salt, and then take 2 onions and let it sit there for 20 minutes and you're done.
This episode is brought to you by Egg Life Wraps. Egg Life Wraps are made with eggs, not flour. Egg Life Wraps have the fresh taste you love and the nutrition you need with less than a gram of carbs and 35 calories, plus 5 grams of protein. So say goodbye to flour and hello to Egg Life, the perfect wrap. I personally have used it as a quesadilla with melted cheese in the middle, or as a sandwich wrap with tuna and fresh veggies chopped up. Delicious. Find Egg Life chillin' in the refrigerated section or at egglifefoods.com. Use my code Jill5 for $5 off your online order of $25 or more. So many great tips there. And I love the sheet pan, idea because, I have a ton of sheet pans. You can just stack them in the oven with all kinds of veggies and really spice up things. So one of the things I was chuckling to myself, and you might have seen me chuckle, because I thought to myself, and I thought probably some other listeners are thinking this too, but I thought to myself, if I made 2 pounds of taco meat, I'm pretty sure my kids would plow through 2 pounds of taco meat.
Yes.
They would eat it in one setting. What do you have? Obviously, you can not let your family know that you're making that much and, stockpile it away. But really what we're getting at is, I guess, the fear of all those good efforts sort of backfiring on you.
Yes. Okay. So it's funny that you brought that up, because I even chuckled in my head. My oldest is 14. So I've just entered the phase where he goes to bed later than me.
Mm-hmm.
He goes downstairs to eat at 11 p.m. at night.
Yeah.
And rummages through. That's the only time I'm like, get out of my kitchen. Like all of a sudden the kitchen is just my space.
Yeah.
The kitchen is closed. We actually got into an argument the other day because I was like, I mentally cannot handle it tonight. Like my kitchen is clean. It's organized. You cannot come in here. And he was like, that's so weird. Why are you not letting me in the kitchen? I was like, I just can't tonight. Like you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
You don't eat at 11 p.m.
Yeah.
So this is actually new territory for me. So I'm glad you brought that up and challenged. I think that families with younger kids, you can really plan and prep. I have started really relying much more on my Instant Pot, on my slow cooker. I love to cook. So I'm sure a lot of people already use those tools a lot. But I have multiple things going now. And it took me so long, but I got one of those convection oven air fryers.
Okay.
And I did a lot of research to get a big one.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I need one that fits a lot of stuff. I don't need just a little basket where 1 can of chickpeas is going to be a super cute and filling snack for multiple days for my toddler.
Yeah.
Like, I think my 11-year-old can inhale a can of chickpeas in 2 bites, you know?
Yeah.
So it does that is where I think meal planning and meal prep really do have to live together, especially with a lot of people in the house, especially with older kids, especially with kids who can feed themselves. So one solution is, and I'm wondering, am I going to get the nutritionist seal of approval on this? But I have been really trying to think about easy things that my teenager can grab on his own without dipping into my prepped stuff that I need for dinner. So looking for frozen burritos, frozen pizzas, stocking up on more like bread and deli meat, hummus and chips, things that I feel like he can raid the fridge and stay away from my taco meat.
Yeah.
I think, he's not that picky. He just wants to eat and he wants it to be satisfying.
Yeah. Well, one thing I can tell you is you're going to be in it for a while, because I have a 19-year-old who goes down at 11 o'clock and still eats, at night. I think it's sort of that growth, phase where if they're eating dinner at 7, 4 hours later, if they're still up, they're hungry.
Yes.
And so to me, it's like if they're snacking on, those nutritious items, then, it's a lot better than going down and raiding the freezer of ice cream. And I'm sure that that's happening on some level, in my own house as well.
Yes.
However, I'm
Definitely
also,
in mine.
yeah, well, I'm also of the mindset of, pat yourself on the back. You did the job. You did what you were supposed to do for the day, and you can't control everything. So, yeah, it is an interesting thing when you're feeding teenagers, because they do have that hunger that is supporting that growth.
And is seemingly insatiable hunger.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But, so what I really recommend is, if you have room for it, a whiteboard in your kitchen,
mm-hmm.
okay, or something that everybody can see,
mm-hmm.
where you're laying out what the dinner plans are.
Mm-hmm.
And get help. Like, there's a lot of emotional labor. You talked about being tapped out of creativity.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to reinvent the wheel every single week by yourself. Keep track of meals that work.
Mm-hmm.
Put them in rotation. This is not a restaurant. Like, it doesn't have to be like super exciting all the time. Don't even allow yourself to spend more than 10 to 15 minutes meal planning. It's too much time. You have other things to do.
Yeah.
If you have 7 days a week, and let's say you have the luxury of slotting takeout or a dinner out one of those nights, you're trying to plan 6 meals.
Mm-hmm.
At least 2 should be like favorites, because you're keeping track of those. Ask your family to come up with 2 meals. Now we're at 5. You just need to come up with 2 meals for the week.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I literally, on my phone, when I make a meal that everybody loves, I put it down in a little note in my phone, because I know I have too much going on to remember. I'm like, what did they like? It was some sort of chicken I made. So it's right there. I just look at my notes. I quickly slot it in.
Yeah.
Now everybody can see it. I can see it. The kids can see it. Everybody knows what I need, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also make sure that I have plenty of other foods, so that they don't have to dip into what I've prepped or purchased for the meal plan.
Yeah, I really like that, because that whiteboard also, not only does it give the whole family what's on board for the week, but you could even say, here are the extras you can munch on.
Yes.
Do not touch this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's also learning for you. It's like, well, we ate all the chips and all the pita chips and all the hummus and and I'm like, okay, so now I know what I need to buy more of.
Exactly.
I mean, that's been the feedback for me from my husband and my 14-year-old. It's time to start buying more.
Mm-hmm.
If a recipe says that we're a family of 4, if a recipe says it serves 4, I double it now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And hopefully I have some leftovers, and I tell Isaac, my 14-year-old, this is leftovers. You can eat this.
Yeah.
And then all the snacks, so it's recalibrating, instead of 2 pounds of taco meat, pull out the big pot.
Yeah.
Make 3 or 4.
Yeah.
It's still cutting down on your cooking time.
Sure.
It's still cutting down on your cooking time and making the most of your ingredients all at once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, those are really, really good tips. What do you think, you sort of hinted to this, but these fallacies that parents believe about feeding their families, or cooking, or meal planning, or meal prep, what are some of those fallacies that you see, or that you're hearing from parents, and what would you say as a response to that, or to some of those?
I think that aspirational cooking is a real tough one, because I think that there's also an emotion, like a sad or negative emotion,
mm-hmm.
even just for yourself, when you decide to let that go. That's not just about your family, but a lot of people who are prone to aspirational cooking and don't
mm-hmm.
kind of meet their standards, even when they give themselves permission to let it go, feel sad that they aren't cooking, a roast and leeks, or I don't know, whatever, making a quiche for Sunday breakfast. And, really getting to the bottom of that for yourself. Something that I always say, and not to veer too much into, Psych 101, but there's something very primal about eating, and then having the responsibility of feeding your child. It starts at the very beginning, sustaining them, making sure they're okay, making sure that they're healthy, making sure that you do a good job. It just feels so heavy and emotional. And, I think we end up projecting a lot of those emotional issues onto our cooking and onto our kids and how they eat. And so, this is not trying to go too deep. I'm not saying you need a food therapist. I'm just saying being aware of that for yourself can help you be neutral about cooking and food so that you can be kinder to yourself.
Yeah.
And so that also, when you're more neutral about food, you can leave more room and space for your child to develop their own relationship with food, separate from your challenges with cooking and eating and food.
Yeah, that's so good.
That may not resonate with everybody, but I do know, I have heard that a lot, and I know it's true for me too.
Yeah.
So, really working on that aspirational cooking thing. I also feel like asking for help seems to be hard. There's something about one parent tends to fall into the role of family cook. And the family cook oftentimes has a very difficult time asking for help. And the truth is sometimes we don't really want help. I know I get into that phase where I'm like, I don't, you think of help in this one way. Mike, my husband, Mike should cook dinner one night a week. We tried that over the pandemic. I was overwhelmed. You know what I ended up realizing? That when Mike cooks, I have 10 times more cleanup. Like I was doing a bigger job that I like less later into the night when I'm more tired. That was not the way I needed help.
Yeah.
So, what is helpful? For me, asking my kids to participate in coming up with dinner ideas, because I'm tapped out a lot of the times creatively. Having grocery delivery or asking Mike to run to the store if there's like one or two things that we need in the middle of the week. So there are lots of different ways to ask for help. And there's lots of little tasks that maybe you're kind of on autopilot that you don't realize are part of being the family cook that you can get someone else to do.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that during the pandemic, one of my triggers was having a dirty kitchen. And when everybody was home, like I like my kitchen to be clean and I like my kitchen to be closed. But when I had 4 kids home, my husband would eat at 7. I'd come down and eat at 8. And then the older girls would roll in at 10 or 11 and cook, like saute their vegetables. And I mean, they were cooking healthy food, which made me feel really proud and happy. But it was like a constantly dirty kitchen. And I remember one day just saying, this just puts me in a bad mood. Like every day it puts me in a bad mood. And I had to just be like, lay down the law and say, if you cook, you have to clean up before you eat the food that you just cooked. You just have to put the dish in the dishwasher, scrub the pot, whatever. How long does it take to scrub a pot? If we really time you, it's like less than a minute if you really focus and do it. Your food is not going to get cold. But it afforded me so much more or so much less stress. And it triggered me less to just be able to see that the kitchen wasn't a bomb every time I came down from my office. And then the other part you mentioned.
So relate.
Yeah. And then the other part was, I remember admitting to my husband, like, I really don't like to grocery shop. I really don't. And so he was like, I like it. So I'll go do it. So throughout the pandemic, my husband did all the grocery shopping. For the most part.
I mean, that's genius. And that's the kind of thing that when we're on autopilot, you don't realize the emotional labor and energy that you put towards coming up with ideas, trying to keep it fresh, keeping track of what everybody likes to eat. And there are a lot of little steps that we automate.
Yeah.
So really just taking a pause and thinking about like, what parts of this are the parts that whether I like them or not, I want to do. Maybe that's the control freak in me speaking. Which parts do I like? Which parts that, do I just need to do because that's what's going to help keep me sane? And which parts can I have somebody else do?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Makes such a huge difference.
I agree. So, as we sort of wrap this up, I do want to dip into some of your tips, or not tips, but your suggestions around kid pleasing meals, just for that back to school time, giving some parents out there some ideas or sparking some inspiration around some food ideas, some mealtime ideas that are pleasing to the kids, fast on mom or dad. What would you toss out there to inspire people as they are listening to this show, probably, knee deep into back to school meetings and orientations and teacher meetings and all that good stuff?
Okay, so I'm going to start in what might be a little bit of a weird place, because it's not what you think of when people say kid friendly. I want to talk about salads because I love a great salad.
Me
and
too.
I feel like a salad does not have to be lame. It can be filling. It doesn't even have to have leafy greens, which if you're dealing with a picky eater, maybe that's the issue. A chopped salad can have protein and cheese and veggies and all these things. And it is really the ultimate easy to deconstruct or DIY, depending on which direction you're going, meal, right?
Yes.
So, and you can prep it ahead. You can wash and dry and prep that lettuce, up to 4 or 5 days ahead, or buy it pre-washed. People, keep it easy on yourself, right? But you can cut up pepper, cucumbers, whatever vegetables your family likes. You can put all of that out. Chickpeas, I talked about some of those meal prep things. If you've made pesto and you've made a basic vinaigrette, one night you use the basic vinaigrette, a few nights down the line, you make a pesto vinaigrette. You grill some proteins. My kids love steak, so I have taken to just buying just buying like 2 big skirt steaks almost every single week that I just grill and slice, and it's in the fridge, right? And then a steak salad. Who doesn't love that with some cubed good cheddar cheese and a great dressing and some pepperoncini, which has great pickly, it can be spicy or mild flavor depending on what your family likes. So I really, deconstructed meals I think are really great, because if you have older kids or you have kids that aren't picky, it's just nice because it can be DIY. But if you are dealing with picky kids, they can kind of pick and choose, and they have a little bit of control. You put it all out on the table.
Yeah.
You're modeling that we love all these healthy foods. You're modeling putting everything into your bowl. Maybe your 6-year-old only eats the cucumbers and the chickpeas and leaves everything else. That's okay. They're getting to make some choices, and that goes a long way to that healthy relationship with food. But it's all out there, and it's exposure, and they can touch it and they can smell it and they can, experiment. So like looking up some great salads, steak salads, chicken salads, panzanella salads are great because hearty pieces of, crusty bread. My kids also love bread. So any meal where I can be like, yes, put big hunks of crusty bread into your salad or into it,
Yes.
Cheese, like all those delicious things. And then I do a lot of like tacos, burritos, crowd pleasers, pasta bakes. I love all that stuff because, again, I can just put a huge 4-pound roast or pork shoulder in the Instant Pot. I shred it and I have a boatload of simple protein. I cook pork shoulder just in orange juice with a bay leaf and some oregano. That's it. It comes out beautiful. You can use pineapple juice. You can cut the juice with water. You're not going to eat a ton of that cooking liquid. So, that's not something you're necessarily going to eat all that juice with it. Yeah. But it just keeps it juicy. It makes it flavorful. A big Instant Pot of black beans or a couple of cans of black beans that you flavor up really simply. And then that can be, for your salad, for your tacos, for your burritos, lots of avocados, lots of roasted veggies. So I'm really into these any meal that we can kind of DIY or put out there in pieces and deconstruct it are real winners.
Yeah, I agree. Speaking of winners,
Woo!
Chicken chicken dinner.
Chicken dinner.
Tell us about that. We used to say that
real
after
quick.
swim meets. Winner.
You know, I never ever thought that we joke on Didn't I Just Feed You that I'm the chicken lady. You know, this was not, it's speaking of aspirational. This was not something I aspired to be, the chicken lady. But, you know, I was approached with the idea and at first I was like, I'm not so sure. And then when I did the research and I realized how much chicken everybody is buying, tons. And also, if you work in digital media, digital food media, that the number one search are chicken recipes. Always and forever. It's been years, right? Yeah. And then also the number one complaint is chicken recipes. So it's like we're buying it, we're eating it, and we're not happy with the results. So again, I said it at the top of the show, my MO is really solving problems so that home cooks can have a little bit more joy and feel a little more accomplished and make it a little easier on them. And I was like, well, I guess, giving people really great kind of modern updates on easy chicken dinners that everyone loves is solving a problem. Yeah. And so that's how we got it. But it's, what the funniest part to me is, by far the most popular recipe is a fast food style fried chicken sandwich. I couldn't it's not the healthiest, but I couldn't do a chicken cookbook without doing a fried chicken recipe.
Sure. No.
And fried chicken has such a rich, important, specific history in American cooking. It's not my cooking. I'm first generation Greek. So I really wanted to approach it in a way that was authentic to me and wasn't kind of building on the backs of other American cooks. So I was like, well, I grew up eating fried chicken from fast food places. That's what I'm going to do. So I perfected this recipe. It's fantastic. We really only eat it like once every few months, even though my kids love it. I can't believe how this recipe took off because the whole point of the book was to make easy chicken recipes. And I did make frying easy. I will tell you that. But of all the recipes, it's certainly not the easiest to fry chicken.
Right.
But there you go. People love fried chicken.
Oh my goodness.
Well, they went for it.
Where can people find your cookbook?
Well,
and find connect more with you.
I would love for people to check their local independent bookstores. And if they don't have it, if they can ask the bookstore if they're willing to ship it in, that would be awesome. That's a win-win for everybody. But of course, it's available at all the major bookstores and on Amazon. So whatever is convenient for you guys.
Awesome.
My personal site is staceybillis.com. You'll find my recipes there, but really where you really find me is didn'tijustfeedyou.com. That's where you'll find the podcast. You can find it anywhere you get your podcasts, right here, wherever people are listening. Hit stop and then go look for Didn't I Just Feed You?
And subscribe.
And we're also Didn't I Just Feed You on social media as well.
Awesome. Well, it has been so fun to have you. You gave us so many great tips for back to school and just rebooting the whole slog with making meals.
There we go. You can do it, parents. You've got this. Yeah. You're already doing great.
Well, it's great to see you and to
likewise, Jill. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you. Take care. Okay, I'm picking the 2 cookbook winners on the podcast, and you can see I have everybody's name here listed, and we are going to do the picker wheel. Our first winner is I'd Rather Be Riding. Wonderful. Okay, let's pick another one and see who our second winner of the Mother Goose Cooking for or with Children cookbooks are. Christian W86, you are our second cookbook winner. Congratulations, both of you.
Thanks for listening to the Nourished Child Podcast, where the #1 goal is to help you grow a nourished child inside and out.